With all the talk and rhetoric about process and reform, we are taking up a bill that was analyzed extensively by the Senate Agriculture Committee in at least a 4-hour hearing earlier this year. And it is my understanding the topic was dealt with by the Senate Agriculture Committee, dismissed and defeated. Yet, for some reason, this measure comes before us at the 11th hour to discuss, when in fact it was discussed extensively by the committee, dealt with during the deliberations by the committee in a nonpartisan fashion, in the official record of the hearing, of which Mr. Espada references. So I think the process as to why this measure is before us is seriously flawed, and those who brought it before us should be questioned about their commitment to legislative reform that we have heard so much about during the earlier portion of this legislative term. New York agriculture competes on a worldwide market. What grows in Wayne County, and whether that be a beautiful apple that is desired by many, the competitors for the consumer's dollar in purchasing that apple see much competition from Canada, from other states, from China, and from other countries in the globe. And for Senator Espada to say that New York agriculture can withstand or be sustained or needs to market itself better as a way to calm the problems and the challenges facing New York agriculture is extremely naive. The truth of the matter is that the wages of farm workers in New York State is 56% above the national average. That the accommodations of agriculture workers in New York State are regulated by the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets, by the Department of Labor, by the United States Department of Agriculture, by the United States Environmental Protection Agency, by the United States Occupational Safety and Health Administration, as well as New York OSHA. All these agencies are regulating the conditions of farm workers. What this bill is trying to do is regulate not the conditions of their housing or other amenities provided the seasonal worker in New York State, but actually regulate the hours worked, the choice of those hours worked, and mandating collective bargaining of all those workers. Senator Espada cites other states that have achieved this legislation. What Senator Espada doesn't say is that the state of Wisconsin, which is a dairy state, competes with New York dairy aggressively. Wisconsin actually repealed this type of legislation because it found itself, and this legislation so detrimental to the agriculture community, and made milk and cheese produced in Wisconsin uncompetitive with cheese and milk products produced in other states, that it found itself repealing this very legislation that is pro-offered today. The bottom line is the bottom line, and the bottom line says that this bill increases the cost of products produced by New York farmers. The bottom line says this bill will actually require fewer jobs because there will be fewer opportunities, because there will be fewer products sold by New York farmers, because New York farmers will not be able to compete with not just other states, but other nations. Canada to the north, Mexico to the south, and of course, now the global competition of Chinese agricultural products. One thing that should also be made clear is that when Senator Espada mentioned Jim Crow and the entire subject, that was also mentioned at the hearing that we saw conducted by the Senate Agriculture Committee. Senator Albertine chaired that committee. Senator Young was the ranking member of the Senate Agriculture Committee. We all heard testimony that was mind-boggling, that talked about many types of abuses of agricultural workers by farmers in this state. Yet when pressed by Senator Young, when asked the question, and asked the question time and again, not by, asked by Senator Young, but not to agricultural workers, but to Ms. Kennedy, who was there to talk on behalf of agricultural workers and made a sweeping indictment of the farmers of this state, when pressed to present any evidence that there were particular sexual assaults or other abuses of farm workers, Ms. Kennedy, at the questioning of Senator Young, could not produce one specific fact where there was such an abuse of workers. In fact, indicated that there were a few anecdotes that were discussed, but she did not present any of those such anecdotes to the appropriate authorities. If someone is alleging sexual assault and they heard evidence of such a violation, any member of this chamber receiving such information would have an immediate responsibility to present that information to the appropriate prosecutorial authorities. So I think, and Senator, I really understand your compassion, but I do not understand why you would taint this issue by presenting that fact, which was in fact dispelled at the committee and was presented for what it was, a sham indictment on the hardworking, God-fearing farmers in this state. Madam President, this type of legislation presents New York farmers who are working 14-hour days, 7 days a week, with their families, a few hired workers per farm, trying to make ends meet, trying to compete in a global marketplace, trying to fight elements. We don't have the best weather in New York State. We don't have the best climate to grow. We have very short growing seasons. Yet our farmers are the most dedicated, most educated, most hardworking of any farmers in any state in the country. To place this onerous regulation for government to say, you now must establish not just minimum wages, not just standards of housing, but hours and working conditions, makes New York agriculture uncompetitive. As such, we must say we cannot tolerate this onerous proposal placed on the #1 industry in our state, because frankly, if it is placed on our #1 industry, agriculture will no longer be our #1 industry. Agriculture will decline in New York State. Agriculture will not be competitive. Agriculture jobs will leave New York State for other states, like Wisconsin, that had the wisdom, even after they enacted this legislation, to repeal it because it did not make sense. Madam President, I urge everyone to reject this proposal and vote no.
Senator Nozzolio to be recorded in the negative.